Hello everybody and welcome back to obviously what is probably a pretty shocking episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator. But with the holidays rolling in very quickly, we're now at the end of October, so we're talking about 2 months until Christmas. I figured this would be a good time to answer one of the many questions that I get very often, and that's what flight products or simulation products I recommend. And today we're going to cover that. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkill's tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future updates and future guides that will be coming down the road. Link to Patreon can be found in the description below. Now, a quick disclaimer here, folks. Please don't skip ahead. I want to remind everyone that as much as I try to make this based on a budget build, that term unfortunately has very little meaning in today's world. As we all know, things are ridiculously expensive right now. Everything is very, very super high priced. But I want to remind you all also that when I first started flight simulation, I was broker than broke. I made a lot of mistakes on the way thinking that I was saving money, and so I'm going to give you guys my opinions of things and why I've selected all of the items that I have selected versus some of the cheaper options. So let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, one more thing as we get into this, guys. I do want to make sure that you guys understand that the websites I have chosen here, it's primarily all Amazon. But please do your research and dig around and see if you can find any of these items for cheaper. There are still plenty of other options. There's Newegg out there, Best Buy, Walmart, and you know, even if you can find some of these things used, most of them are pretty sturdy and will hold up. So just keep that in mind, that I'm using Amazon today as a reference point to display the object, but not necessarily as my buying recommendation. Okay. So, getting right into it, we're going to talk about HOTAS first, right? Flight controls. What are we going to use to actually control the aircraft? Now, my recommendation, if you are someone especially if you're someone who's just getting into flight simulation in general, and you even think for an instant that you may want to get into combat aircraft, I recommend the Thrustmaster Warthog. Okay, the Thrustmaster Warthog is extremely robust. It's very, very functional. It feels good in the hands. Its control surface is nice. It's well built. It's easily obtainable. You know, and that's not to discredit anyone else. There's still Virpil out there who makes obviously very, very great products. But again, there can be quite a significant wait or lead time before you actually get your product. So that's why I've picked Thrustmaster today for the HOTAS. And the reason why I'm recommending this, if you are even, like I said, remotely interested in getting into combat simulation, air combat simulation, or air combat simulators, I highly recommend that before you go with a yoke and throttle setup, that you go with the Thrustmaster Warthog, because you can use it in everything. In many of my YouTube videos, I'm actually using the Thrustmaster, as it's very easy for me to switch between one simulator to the other when I'm doing my content. The Honeycomb and flight controls, which we'll get into in a minute, are fantastic, but they're big, they're bulky, they can be sort of a pain in the butt to move around. So keep that in mind. If you're even remotely, the other good thing that where a flight stick comes in handy is helicopters. You know, if we're talking about like Microsoft Flight Simulator, for example, the helicopters are very, very difficult to fly with a yoke. I tried it one time and never, ever even thought about doing it again. I never will. It was an uber mistake. So be thinking about that again, or if you're looking for an upgrade, okay, maybe you're using, like I started with a Microsoft 3D Extreme. That was, I think, a $40 joystick when I started, itty bitty throttle on the back. And then I moved forward. Now, an alternative to this is what I started with. Which was the predecessor to this one, the X55. You can no longer find it now. It's the X56. Now, unfortunately, back when I got it a few years ago now, it was only $250. So again, please do your research as you're digging around for these guys. Don't be shocked by the price tags. Everything is being gouged right now. It's just crazy. As I was doing my research in this and picking my items, I was blown away by the prices of everything that I've seen here today. So I do apologize for that. Unfortunately, I can't control the prices. But a good alternative is the X56. And again, the nice thing about this versus the Thrustmaster. The Thrustmaster does not have a twist grip. So please keep that in mind. If you are getting the Thrustmaster Warthog, you do not have any kind of rudder control or yaw axis. Where this one, you do. It's got a twist grip on it. It feels okay in the hands. I mean, the nice thing about the flight stick itself, it's very large, so it actually feels great in my hands. If you're someone like me who has big hands and a large palm, it works out really nicely. It's still got the independent throttles. There's still a bunch of buttons and switches. Now, the difference between on the buttons and switches on this one here was that these buttons are all momentary. Every single switch that you see on the display here on the throttle, it's momentary, meaning as soon as you let go, it's going to go back to its centered position. But it's also, they all have forward and aft, so that kind of helps out. And there are certain applications like RS Mapper or SPAD.next that give you the ability to do some pretty cool things with switches like that. So be keeping that in mind. It's a bit cheaper. I mean, it's still about half the price, which is still a good thing compared to the Thrustmaster Warthog. Again, $350. I was still blown away when I saw that, but it is what it is. That's the world we live in now. Now, I will tell you, I had initially bought the, and again, remembering that at this time in my life, I was very tight on money. Money was very difficult to obtain for me at that time. 2 new kids, etc., blah, blah, blah. You guys know the drill. I had the X55, again, the predecessor, basically the exact same thing. There's only minor differences, but they look identical. I think the 55 was green. But I had it for about 2 months before I moved to the Thrustmaster Warthog. And there was no reason other than preference of why I made that move. The Thrustmaster had better quality. I am very big into immersion. I'm always looking for immersion. And the momentary switches that are on the X55, I didn't like. All right, let's try that again. And I wanted that high quality. The Thrustmaster Warthog is much, much heavier. There are much more expandability options with a Thrustmaster Warthog. You can get desk mounts for it, which you can get desk mounts for this too. Don't get me wrong. But you can get extensions. You know, I mean, I've seen people with huge extensions on these things, anywhere from, you know, a couple of centimeters up to, you know, a foot or more. You know, and where the advantage there comes into play is with the tension spring on the Thrustmaster Warthog. The tension is significantly higher. So you have a much stronger feel in the flight stick. And so when you add that with an extension, what that does is it makes those finite movements, those real fine controls that you're doing, maybe when doing formation or what's the word I'm looking for? Air-to-air refueling, something like that, where you need really precise control. The Thrustmaster definitely dominates in that area. Overall build quality, the Thrustmaster dominates, you know, and it's not to shoot down Logitech, and I'm not a huge Logitech fan, but I will say that this particular flight system is actually a good system. It really is, especially for a beginner. But there is no comparison between it and Thrustmaster. Thrustmaster's Warthog is fantastic. Okay, again, same thing with Virpil. Their quality is through the roof. Okay. So those are my 2 recommendations when it comes to HOTAS, hands-on throttle and stick. And now let's move on to what's next. Okay, so the next segment here is rudder pedals. Okay, I've got an expensive version here, and we also have a cheaper lower-end version. So stay with me on this. Rudder pedals are very commonly overlooked. You have twist grips and things like that, and yeah, they're great. But again, you lose a lot of finite control when using the twist grip, because as you turn your hand left or right, or rotate your hand to rotate the ailerons, in flight simulation, you're also going to be adding a bit of twist. I mean, it's just that natural movement of your hand. It's very difficult, not impossible, but a little bit more difficult to make sure that you're just moving the aileron surfaces. Okay, and that's where you have to get into things like dead zones and things like that. The other thing is real aircraft are controlled by pedals, for anyone who may not know that, when they're on the ground. The nose wheel steering is most typically controlled by the rudder pedals, unless we're talking about airliners, and that's a whole different thing. They use a tiller, but still. The thing about rudder pedals is, and the reason why I picked these as my first pick, it's not just because I have them, but that's the bonus, right, is that I've been using them for almost 2 years now. The dead zone the center detent is virtually non-existent. Yes, they spring back to their center position, But when you are pushing between left and right, going all the way from one full left to the full right position, you can't really feel that center position. And that makes it very, very nice because you don't have to add that extra bit of pressure to push through the detent, which gives you really nice finite control when either, on your approach or anytime you're making a coordinated turn, or when you're on the ground. It makes that taxi much more enjoyable. And again, further increasing that immersion. The quality of these is fantastic. They are very heavy. I think it's completely metal. I think the pedals are aluminum, but the rest of the structure is definitely metal. Again, very, very heavy base. The one thing I will say about these in particular is that they do like to slide. Because they're so heavy, you got to push in quite a bit. You really do, which again, that's part of what gives you that real smooth control. So you will want to give you guys an idea. I have mine mounted on a piece of plywood on the carpet. And then when I'm done flying, I just sort of shove the whole thing over, but it works out very, very nicely. What you're looking for is something between it and the wall. Like if you're attaching these to a desk, you want something that's going to keep them from being able to rotate left and right as you push, and therefore keeping, and like I said, mounting them on a piece of plywood or something like that it goes all the way to the wall. That way that plywood can't rotate either, and you're golden. Okay. So just think about that if you want to go that route. Again, extremely high quality. These are fantastic rudder pedals. The angle of the pedals is adjustable. The tension is adjustable. There are all kinds of things. So really, really great product. This is only about $100 more than when I bought them. Okay, if that makes you guys feel any better about that. I don't know if it does or not. I don't know if that would make me feel better or not. But definitely makes a difference. Okay, definitely worth the money. If mine died today, I would absolutely shell this out, and buy a new set, But bringing us to the cheaper alternative, as I promised, we're going to take a look at the Logitech Pro Flight rudder pedals. I had these for a couple of months. They are nice. There's a very strong detent. You can absolutely feel the center detent in it. They're primarily plastic, as you can see here. I mean, what you're seeing on the page is what you get. But they're a good starting point. They really are. The adjustable pedals aren't bad at all. They're not something you'd want to kick the crap out of. You don't want to be like just jerking the pedal in, which I don't know why you would do that anyway. Even in a fighter, I don't think you'd be kicking the rudder quite that hard. But especially for general aviation, or I should say, things like Microsoft Flight Simulator, where you're not in a combat simulation experience. These are fantastic. They're a great starting point. Whoa, what happened there? That's not where I wanted to be. There we go. And the price point is actually really good. Another pair of rudder pedals that I used to use before these was the CH Pro rudder pedals, and they were $100 when I got them, and when I looked for them right now, they were like $230 or $240, and I won't endorse that. CH products are very, very plain. They're very, very simple, very, very cheap build, if you will. $100 was perfect for it. Almost $300, not even a chance. So that's why I'm not even mentioning them here. They were very expensive on Amazon. So, but rudder pedals are a huge part of flight simulation. They really do add way more than you think. And if you are flying correctly, quote unquote, and really wanting to learn the real way of flying and using coordinated turns, you use them more frequently than you think. The other thing that I will say that rudder pedals are critical for, in my personal opinion, is helicopters. Helicopter flight's all based around that anti-torque pedal, or the anti-torque rotor. So that's what keeps you straight and true. So really be thinking about that if you're looking again to either upgrade or maybe add a piece of or rudder pedals to your flight simulation setup. Recommendation, if it's in the budget, absolutely going to be the TPRs. But if not, even these or a Thrustmaster's version. My issue with Thrustmaster's rudder pedals is they're very, very narrow. I got to try them when I was at Flight Sim Expo a couple years ago in Vegas, and they're very, very close together, and I didn't like that. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'1", with size 13 feet. So, my knees didn't enjoy that kind of angle. So, that's the nice thing about I like about the TPRs. The distance between the two pedals is quite nice. It's a very natural feel, where some of the other ones, and that's the same thing with the Logitechs, is you have a lot of ability to configure them in a way that's more relaxing for you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. We did forget one part of flight controls, and that is if you are hell-bent on going with yoke and throttle, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely fantastic. I have the next two items on my desk as we speak. But my comments about the Thrustmaster and sticking with just a flight stick was just for those who are just diving into it and may want to dabble in other aircraft other than general aviation and big commercial jets. Okay? With that in mind, these are another one that can be tough to get a hold of. And that's going to be both the Honeycomb Alpha and the Honeycomb Bravo. This throttle quadrant, I will say, if I didn't have mine, I would pay this for it. Like right now, knowing what I know now, and knowing that this is about $100 above retail and what Honeycomb is wanting to sell these for, I would still pay these for these right now. Especially for the throttle quadrant. This throttle quadrant is absolutely fantastic. I love this thing, and it's so customizable. You can swap it out. Let's see if they got pictures of it being swapped out. Yep, there you go. Those you can see the general aviation throttle prop and mixture there. You can swap them out, and it comes with everything you see in the picture here. It comes with it, and it comes with configurations for all axis, for twin engine complex. So you're going to have two throttles, two blue for your prop, two blue for your mixture. The flap controls is absolutely fantastic. You get landing gear, you got autopilot controls, light switches or whatever you want to bind those switches to, a bit panel, your warning panel down there. It's a great piece. The trim wheel alone, just this wheel right here, is a lifesaver when it comes to flight simulation. It is so nice to have that. It's so much better than using a point of view hat or some sort of button to manage your trim. It is so nice. Especially with the latest update with Microsoft Flight Simulator, they actually made it really nice because Microsoft Flight Simulator reduced the input that is delivered to the simulator when you adjust your trim. So, by having that and the wheel here, you can really fine tune your trim and get it to a point where you can almost go hands free, as long as none of the other variables change, speed, weather, etc. But anyway, so these two are tough to get a hold of right now, and I recommend also going straight to the Honeycomb website, getting on their waiting list if you want. You do have to purchase it up front, but guys, if it were me, and underneath my Christmas tree or whichever holiday you send for, if you're just someone who wants to buy it yourself or give it to a loved one, whatever. Someone handed me a card that said, "Hey, I got you your Honeycomb Alpha controls, and it's going to be here on X date." I wouldn't care. I'd still be all over it. That would still be a wonderful day. Yeah, you got to wait, but it'd be worth it. It's absolutely worth it. This is one of those ones where I will tell you I would not get any other brand. I used to have the Logitech flight yoke system, which is still running at $250, and with the price gouging going on, God knows what it is now. I didn't even bother to look at it. And the reason why I didn't bother to look at it is because at the time... So let's talk about what the prices are supposed to be. I think the prices for the Honeycomb Alpha, which is this guy here, and the throttle that we looked at a second ago, they're supposed to be $279.99 each, is my understanding. Okay, that's what the MSRP is. For the Logitech flight yoke and throttle system, it's like $249.99. Okay, so we're talking about $20 difference. Let's call it. Let's put it this way: it's a $20 difference with $1,000 quality difference. The Logitech flight system, in my personal opinion, both their throttle quadrant set and the flight yoke set are crap. The sensors are junk. They, with their throttle system, you have to take it apart literally out of the box. It's recommended by us end users and people who have experience with them that you take them apart and clean them, which is a pain in the backside. They show up dirty. They ghost a lot, meaning, for those of you who don't know what ghosting is, you get inputs that you didn't actually do. And they're just junk. Let me just put it that way. They're just junk. I do not like the Logitech flight system. I think it's absolute crap. The rudder pedals, again, I've used those. I didn't have any problems with the rudder pedals. These guys right here, that's a Logitech. There it is right there. This set right here. So $169.99. So they reduced it in price, what they did. And they should have. But even at $169.99, guys, I would never recommend this. It's going to be a far more frustrating experience. It doesn't have a full 90-degree rotation as this does. This, you can turn those yokes full up, okay, where these you can't. There's just a major difference in quality, and I would never recommend the Logitech system. I would absolutely say, if you're going to spend the money, This is where I was talking about those mistakes I made in the past about burning money on junk, and where I should have just waited a bit longer, even though I wanted to dive into it. I wanted to be able to be a part of it. I wish that I had waited, saved the money, and gotten what was actually worth the money at the time. So for general consumer market, I know, again, $360. Again, you should be able to find them cheaper on Honeycomb Aeronautical's website. And you'll do a lot better. Okay, it's worth the wait. Even if Honeycomb has a 3-month, 6-month wait, I would spend the money and wait. Okay, because it'll be worth it in the end. You're going to enjoy the quality that Honeycomb provides. And they have a set of rudder pedals they're getting ready to release here soon too. I think imminently, within the next month or so, if memory serves, if not already. I haven't actually looked. But definitely fantastic piece of product. Okay, both of them, they're wonderful in comparison to anything else that I've tried, without going into the professional grade quality, which you're talking thousands of dollars at that point. All right, so now let's talk about the peripherals that we can talk about. Next on our list is probably the biggest, most important and critical piece of gear you can have for flight simulation, and that is some sort of head tracker. Now, I want to, before I get into this and some of the others here that we have on the list, I want to make sure you guys understand there are some really, really good free apps that you can download onto your cell phone and use your cell phone camera as your head tracker. They're a little weird, and maybe we'll go into one. I'll do a whole separate video on those, and we'll test out a couple. But they really are nice. It's coming a very long way, so please keep that in mind before we go forward. I'm not out to waste anybody's money, so I wanted to make sure I start with that. They're really coming a long way. When they first launched, they were crap. They didn't work for junk. That is not the case anymore. A lot of these apps that you can get, iStore, Apple Store, and then the Play Store on Google. I have an Android, if you can't tell. They're working really good. When my TrackIR camera died a couple years ago, this piece right here that you're looking at the screen, it actually took a crap. Now there's some backstory to that. I think I broke it is what happened, with a little help from a husky. But we won't talk about that. Vietnam flashbacks. But when it died, it took me a couple of weeks before I had the money to buy a new one. I used one of those phone apps, and it worked really good. Had a couple of weird issues, especially with lights going on, but all in all, it was nice. So I wanted to make sure to mention that first. There are free apps that you can use. Just go to your Apple Store or Play Store and type head tracking app, and I guarantee you'll find what I'm looking for. Anyway, so now getting into these, TrackIR is definitely the best in the industry thus far, as far as my experience. Now, they're the most expensive, at $160, and you can go to naturalpoint.com and find it. Here's the Natural Point right here. And typically, you can probably, if it's not available on Amazon, usually they have it at Natural Point, that you can get it. And the price point is the same. Now, you get the camera, and you get a hat clip, meaning you literally need to wear a ball cap, and you get this clip. I don't know if it shows it in any of these pictures. I didn't see it. No. You get this little hat clip that clips onto your ball cap, and then you have to make sure that the lighting is right, and it works pretty well. It really does. You configure it. There's tons of videos on YouTube on configuring your TrackIR, so I'm not going to get into that. But it allows you to move your head around basically you turn your head and your camera on the screen turns. And that is so huge for flight simulation. It's not as necessary when we talk about like Microsoft Flight Simulator, although still huge. But like in DCS World Air Combat Simulation, a must. Okay, trying to use a POV hat tracking a fighter when you're in a close-in dogfight is ridiculously hard. Okay, I'm not saying, again, not impossible. There are people who have mastered and are great at it, but definitely difficult. Okay, absolutely difficult. Now, what I do recommend, if you're someone who wears a headset, okay, and you want to use something like this, is you want to get this guy here. So let's move on down for just a second. And this is the TrackClip Pro, and this black piece right here at the top next to the LED there actually clips onto your headset. You can sort of see the silhouette of the headset next to it. I'm sitting here pointing on the screen like you guys can see me. And it works really, really nicely. And you got a USB cable, and what you can see down here, what they've done is a lot of people will get a USB battery. and just plug it into that. And basically at that point, I mean, you have a wire coming from this, but it goes down to a battery. You can put the battery in your shirt pocket, in your pants pocket, set it down next to you, and you're disconnected from the computer, which is really nice. And it works great. It's a fantastic addition. Now there is a way to do it where you can use, we'll talk about in another video how I have it. I have just this, using a PS3i camera, but I'm going to do a completely separate video on that later tonight. You guys should see that rolling out very soon. Now the problem is some of the hardware is getting hard to find. The PS3i camera is getting very difficult to locate. Anyway, a very, very crucial piece of flight simulation, or racing simulation for that matter, truck driving simulation, American truck simulator. I mean, any kind of motion simulator where you need to be able to look around. This thing is fantastic. It can take a little getting used to because essentially you're turning your head, but you keep your eyes focused on the center of your screen. So that part can get a little weird, takes a little while to get used to it, but once you do, you'll never ever, you won't be able to fly without it. It just gets frustrating when you do it. Okay. So again, very, very great piece of equipment. Highly recommend it. So moving on, this is where things are going to get really expensive and where you also have to do some research and make sure that your computer hardware can handle it. I know graphics cards are extremely hard to get a hold of right now. I wouldn't pay the money for a graphics card right now to save someone's life. Not true, but still, you guys get the gist. Cards that are supposed to be at $700 or $800 are going for $3,000 and more. So I do not recommend trying to buy a graphics card right now, but that's just my personal opinion. But moving forward, we're going to get into virtual reality. Now, I had initially picked the Oculus Rift S because it was the cheapest of the group. Normally it used to be around $400, and maybe we can still find it for that somewhere. I am blown away with this. Like, I do not understand what's happening here that they've done this. It is, when I bought mine years ago, like I said, it was 2 years ago, $350, I think is what I purchased it for. So this is insane. Again, it's another prime example of price gouging. But if it's in the budget and it's something you want to do, you really want to get into VR, if your computer can handle it, there is absolutely no match for the immersion that you're going to get from virtual reality. Virtual reality is the best way to experience flight simulation and racing simulation, in my personal opinion. You do sacrifice a little bit of the graphics quality. The picture may not look quite what it is, but what you get is depth perception. And depth perception in flight simulation, racing simulations, anything like that is critical. It's everything. Your landings are going to feel much more intense. The takeoffs are much more intense. Ripping through a canyon, in a GBR3 or some sort of high performance aircraft is never going to be the same again. You're never going to get that induction of or feeling of speed that you get from virtual reality on the monitor. So highly recommend that, but we're going to talk about two different options. If you're willing to spend this kind of money, I do recommend going forward with something like the Pimax 5K. Pimax, I don't think gets enough attention. Their VR headsets are truly fantastic. I have the Pimax 5K Plus. This is the 5K Super. This is the next release of it. I've had the opportunity to try out the Pimax 8KX, which is amazing, which we're going to take a look at next, but significantly higher price point. But for $750 at the price point that's being requested at here, this thing is amazing. Now, you do need at least one of the HTC, what's the word I'm looking for? VR tracking panels. Gosh, why can't I think of it? Let's go find that real quick because I didn't even think about that. So we're going to go to Amazon. HTC Vive. Yes. Tracker? I think it's just Tracker. Is that what I'm looking for? No, that's hand tracker. Okay, so it's one of these. It's the base station. Gosh, I couldn't think about the word base station. That's what we want right there. So the HTC Vive base station. Let's move it forward one. Actually, we're going to go to here. You do need at least one of these. Just one. That's all I've got, and it works fine. I never lose connectivity when I'm flying. I'm not dancing around like a fool, turning around. I'm not playing any kind of soldier game. Where I have to turn around. For flight simulation, even looking behind me, I have never lost tracking. So they work really, really well. But that is, again, more money on top of that when it comes to the Pimax. That is one of the drawbacks to the Pimax, is that it does require that. Okay, now, let me back up one more time. It requires that for the full 6-degree field of motion. So without it, you can still look up, look down, turn your head, rotate, blah, blah. But what you can't do is if you lean forward, your head does not move in the simulator. If you move back, you don't move in the simulator. Where if you tack on this guy here, you do. That's where that last bit of motion, those last two, basically your Z and Y axis come into play. Is that at that point, then you'll actually, you could stick your head out the window as long as you have one of these. Literally lean over, your head goes out the window. It's kind of funny. But anyway, so that is required. Now the last bit, if you're really wanting to go full deep in here, you want to get this guy. Is my recommendation, and that's the Pimax 8KX. I've had the opportunity from Pimax to try this thing out. Now, the thing that I didn't mention about on the last one that separates Pimax from the rest is this, the 200 degrees field of view. Why is it such a big deal? Oh, well, Mike, I can see more of the screen. Why would I want to spend the money for that? What you get with a larger field of view in VR is peripheral vision. When you start getting peripheral vision, that's where you really start to get that sense of speed and motion. Most of our sense of motion actually comes from the sides of our eyes, our peripheral vision, things whipping past and outside of our line of focus. And that's where you get that feeling of speed and everything's moving real quick. It's not so much what we're looking at out in front. That does obviously play into it. But when you get that peripheral side vision going on, that's where it makes a big difference. The other thing is the wider field of view is just really nice in general. You can see more. You have more focus point. You're not turning your head as much. You can monitor what's going on your left and right sides while also still maintaining focus on your forward panels and displays, etc. So really, really awesome. Obviously, again, a bit higher price point. However, that's a pretty significant discount right now, 21% off. That's pretty awesome. And I would absolutely pay this for this headset. This headset is great. Again, I have had the opportunity to try it. It really, really is a very nice piece of VR equipment. Okay, but again, be sure to do the research and make sure that your computers can handle it. That's the tough part. This thing does require, a pretty heavy weight. But if you have, like, for example, 30 series, 3070 and above, I would say you're going to push the Pimax without even breaking a sweat. All right, so we've covered our head trackers now. We've covered rudder pedals. We've covered flight control systems. Let's get into some of the more other peripherals that are available. All right, now as we start getting into peripherals, I want to make very, very clear to everybody that you can do, the list is endless. It really is. There's so many options out there. It's absolutely crazy how many options are out there for this. So I want to make that very clear. This recommendation that I'm giving you right here is a fantastic addition to someone who is just starting out, because it gives you a little bit of everything, gives you everything at the touch of a finger, and it has far more realism to it than you would think it does. No, it does. It's not all the buttons, switches, knobs, things like that are in the airplane. And some people would say that I'm wrong about this, and that's fine. We're all welcome to our own. We're all looking for something different. Where this is also great is if you don't have a lot of money, but you don't want to be constantly reaching for the mouse. If you don't have a lot of space, okay, if you're someone who wants all the cool tech, things like this up here or this over here or things like this, but you don't have the space for it, okay, this thing is fantastic. The one thing I will tell you is total price. It sounds like I had someone else reached out to me and they basically built it from scratch. Looking at it, total price, don't let this price fool you. You're looking at about $240 out the door, done, assembled in your hands. But this is a great way to start. Now, be sure if you want to go this route, and I have a video on this, please be sure to check my video list. It was only a couple weeks ago, if that. I did a full review on how this functions, okay? But be sure to read all of this because it tells you everything else outside of this that you need to buy. Okay, and you need to really make sure you read all of this carefully. But this is everything that it does. I mean, guys, it's awesome. Okay, he breaks down everything that this little thing does here, and it's all touch screen minus the one rotary. Okay, let's see here. But right here, this kit is not complete. Extra parts must be purchased separately to ascend. Okay, please read this. Okay, and that's gone up. Again, that's probably more like $220. And you can come right here, and there's videos on how to assemble it, how to configure it. And the other thing that you will need with this, which is very, very nice. Oh, and it's designed, by the way, It is designed, its idea is to mount right here on top of it. You can see those screw holes on the top of the Honeycomb there. It's designed to mount right on top of that. Now you can put it on that or on the throttle. The throttle, oh, no you can't. Why did I think the throttle had them? Okay, I'm wrong. I lied. Fail. Stop watching the video right now. I'm clearly full of crap. But anyway, it is, all joking set aside, it is designed to sit on top of this, as he mentions here. Okay, right here. And it looks like can be used on the Honeycomb Alpha yoke, Citation Pro Flight yoke. That's the one that I don't recommend. Sorry, not Logitech. Citation is now Logitech. So anyway, that's up to you guys. I'm going to create my own mounting system for mine, but I love this thing. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. I bought it just as something to have for a review, but wanted to check it out. I'm constantly wanting to look at new things, and this thing is too cool. It's really nice. And again, if you're like me and you bounce between different simulators and moving around the controls can sometimes be really cumbersome and a pain in the ass, this is a great alternative. But again, please read through everything here so that way you get a full breakdown of everything you need. Now, I will tell you the assembly, anybody can do it. And this is what it looks like right here. You guys can see how small it is. That's the Pro Flight yoke system. Again, this is the one I don't recommend, but you can see here what they've done. This is how small it is. Just a 4-inch touchscreen, and it works great. It's absolutely beautiful. Although I really kind of like that. I'm not going to lie. Anyway, ooh, shiny. It is a wonderful addition, and again, anybody can assemble it. The YouTube video that he has for assembly is very easy to follow. He doesn't skip any steps. It's really well done. So just keep that in mind. But definitely recommend this. Very nice. Now, the one thing you are going to need with this is going to move us on to our next item. Okay, this is called SPAD.next, and you can go get to it by SPAD.next.com. No dot. Okay, otherwise it tries to track it as a website, and it's not. So SPAD.next.com brings you here. What SPAD.next is, it's an application. You can see it down here on my toolbar. It's an application that, how do I put this? It enables functionality for your controls that aren't in the simulator by default. Okay, it offers an extreme amount of customization, allows you to use things like that class echo like we just talked about, or your custom home gear and gauges and things like that you can purchase for flight simulators. You can get really crazy with this stuff. And this SPAD.next will require either a one-time purchase, and let's see here. Let's go. Here we go. Let's take a look what the purchase options are. Okay, so you have a complete edition, which is $89.99. Gives you all of these variables. You have MSFS home use. Now, if we go to buy now on the home use, let's just take a look at that one. That's all we're going to be interested in. Let's see here. Total price. Oh, yeah, buy now. There is one, and I thought it was $59.99. I could be mistaken. Did I just open it? Where did I open that? Nope, that's not what I was looking for. You guys can tell I was looking for an image. Like, how are you going to find those right now? There it is. Okay. There is an option where you can purchase it and you only buy it once. It's either that or it's a subscription on a yearly basis, which I think is one, like this is one of them. And I'll tell you, for what it does, and you get full use of it for 14 days. Boom, just full use of it. Okay? So you get to try it out in its entirety. And I also have a couple of videos on using SPAD as well and how to configure it. Be sure to go look for those if you're interested in what it does. Even if you don't get the Class Echo, if you don't buy this, SPAD.next is still something I recommend. I no longer bind any of my controls inside of Microsoft Flight Simulator, except for the Flybywire A32NX because I didn't find a way around it. But with the exception of the Flybywire, I don't bind, and the only thing I bound, by the way, for the Flybywire is the throttle. That's the only thing that's in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I got so sick and tired of dealing with Microsoft Flight Simulator's built-in control scheme, and it makes it like night and day. Like I said, be sure to go check out my SPAD.next video. You'll find it on my channel list. Again, not too long ago, just recently did one where I did a full configuration, startup from start to end. Amazing piece of software. Now you will need this if you buy this. So let's call it again $250. But the nice thing about this is it saves you from buying many other peripherals, buttons, switches, toggle boxes, rotaries, things like that. This thing does everything. So I can't stress that enough. This is a really, from your lights to the game simulation speed to engine start, batteries, starters, radios, navigation radios, you name it, this little thing does it. It's pretty awesome. So I can't stress that enough. But staying on SPAD here. SPAD is another one that's an absolutely wonderful piece of software. You can see it works with many other simulators, also in conjunction with FSUIPC, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Okay, so as I said before, we were going to talk about FSUIPC 7 next. Now, FSUIPC 7 for Microsoft Flight Simulator is its own software. So this is speaking just to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, there are free versions of this that you can get, but they're very, very limited on what their functionality is. This is another one where I'm not going to go into too far detail, but it gives you extreme customization ability for your controls, allows you to do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do by using the in-game control scheme. And again, there is FSUIPC for things like X-Plane 11 and P3D as well, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. But this is another very, very nice handy piece of software, not as required. It is not required to work in conjunction, for example, with the class Echo, but it's a very nice utility to have if you are someone who has interest in building your own cockpits, building your own button boxes, switches, etc., and things like that in flight control systems. But that's pretty much it for this one. Again, this is sort of like a last-minute tack on it, an honorable mention, if you will, is FSUIPC 7, but I did want to make sure to toss that out there. I do want you guys to remember that all of these are just suggestions. They are just my personal preferences and where I would go based on what I know now and based on the mistakes that I've made back in the past. Regret purchases, purchases that I wish that I hadn't made now. I made a lot of mistakes thinking I was getting good quality. I didn't. It goes back to, that Citation flight yoke system. I wish I'd never purchased that. The, the Logitech X55, although it was a good system, nowhere near the quality of the Thrustmaster Warthog. So those are things to be thinking about. And then virtual reality, I'm going to let you guys be sure to do your research on what you're looking for. Don't just take my word for it. Everything that I've said here is just my personal opinion. Feel free to add down below, comment what's your recommendations. Again, with the holiday season coming up and people being interested and we all want to get new things and something nice for our loved ones and friends, or maybe we just want to spoil ourselves under the tree this year. I just wanted to try to get a jump on that, as I know that people are going to start their shopping very, very soon. So with that in mind, guys, as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for me. It really does help me out. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, folks.